Govan, once independent and at the centre of the Kingdom of Strathclyde, this district has a rich history that stretches all the way back to the Middle Ages. Remnants of this powerful history lie quietly in the architecture and geography of Govan. Kings once used processional paths through the churchyard at Govan Old to get to what is historically known as Doomster Hill. Next to the now demolished Doomster Hill is Water Row, a street which survives as another historically valuable piece of Govan's history. The crossing was in use for centuries before the start of the Clyde's substantial dredging in the 1850s. As a result, it was no longer possible to cross this section of the Clyde on foot, and the historical connection between Govan and Partick was severed. The explosion of shipbuilding on the Clyde meant that Water Row, Doomster Hill, in the pre-industrial life of Govan was replaced by rapid industrialisation, and the demand for craft traders became less and less. Tradespeople, such as weavers and dysters, sought new employment as shipbuilders, transferring their skills and becoming integral to the illustrious and renowned legacy of Glasgow shipbuilding. Govan and the importance of its tradespeople has always been inextricably linked through time, accompanied by the local prestige and religious centre that is now Govan Old Parish Church. The churchyard and its constant use through many centuries demonstrate how valuable this site was to the local people of Govan. After the demise of the church's power, both merchants and tradesmen fought for control of Glasgow until the Crown interfered. And in 1605, the Letter of Gildry was passed. This regulated the trades through the trades houses and merchants through the merchants' house. A merchant, given the title Dean of the Guild, and a tradesman, known as Deacon Convener, were appointed to oversee admittance to the guild. If one wanted to sit in a position of power in the city, they would have to join the guild. This map shows the most westerly point of which appears to have a cross on the roof, presumably denoting the parish church. This map, published in 1795, shows the kirk and manse as two predominant buildings in the town. This map shows Govan at the outset of industrialisation and provides an unprecedented level of detail. To the east, the north-south line of buildings making up the Water Row is shown. A big change is that the surveyors stopped indicating the Doomster Hill's presence from the 1840s. These various maps allow a general picture of the history of this site to be drawn for the past 300 years. By bringing these maps to life, we can visualise the expansion through time. In the 1900s, many global industries have been established, and Govan had expanded. We see factories and blocks of tenements that house those working in the shipbuilding, timber and agricultural industries. Travelling back to the 1800s, we can see a dramatic reduction in infrastructure and built elements in Govan. Visualised as the 1700s, in which the area surrounding Water Row was solemn and quiet. The width of the Clyde was much smaller at this time and could be crossed easily with small rowboats. The continuous use of this site from the Middle Ages to modern times evidences the major impact this site has on every community who has lived and worked around it. Several types of graves can be seen, such as Victorian obelisks and family plots. These gravestones use a lot of ecclesiastical imagery, such as cherubs and more eerily hourglasses and skulls to serve as omens of death. These larger stones dominate the graveyard with their grand stature, but if you allow your eyes to wander, you can find many smaller, unassuming gravestones which belong to the pre-industrial traders who lived and worked in Govan throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. Many of these traders operated between Govan and Partick, meaning their livelihood would have depended on the crossing at Water Row. They had large, special symbols relating to their trades carved onto the front of their gravestones, with any personal details such as dates or initials existing as small, faint memories on the front or back of the stones. Inscriptions of full names, place and dates of birth and death are easily seen on the newer graves, but for those pre-industrial traders, remembering the commitment to work was more important than remembering the individual. This gravestone showcases symbols of a crown and a hammer, which tells us that a former hammerman is buried here. They would have worked with metal and created many common objects such as tools, lamps, and clocks. Here we have a gardener, who has been represented by a shovel and a trowel. Their trade would have involved the maintenance of green spaces, and perhaps this person worked on the private and public gardens in both Govan and Partick. This is one of the more complex graves in terms of symbolism and carved elements. Depictions of a press, shears, and carding brush tells us that this grave belongs to a dyester. They would have been responsible for the many elements of dyeing fabric and the collection and processing of natural materials such as woad for creating coloured textiles. Continuing through the graveyard, this grave is from the same era. This trade is represented by a very specific hammer, which we can identify as that of a cooper's. They would have crafted barrels and storage vessels for liquids, grains, and perishable foods. Water Row, in its current state, is a chaotic environment. Sounds of ongoing construction dominate the streets, much like that at the time of the industrial expansion. However, this new regeneration project seeks to do something much different. With the building of a new pedestrian and cycle bridge, fragments of cultural and industrial heritage are being joined together again, and the communities of Govan and Partick will be reconnected by a contemporary adaptation of the historic Water Row crossing.